Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat malam, Bapak dan Ibu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are you all? How are you doing all this evening? I hope each of us is doing very well tonight. My name is Mary Silaban, and I'm the Master of Ceremony of the session for this evening. Tonight is indeed a very special night for us, the Wecmic 2021 Committee, because tonight is the last stretch of the conference that has been running well for 1 month since November 1st. And it is a great relief for us to be here tonight at the closing of the Wecmic 2021. And we are very excited here because tonight we are having a very special guest lecture. The reason why we are all here gathering, I apologize for my voice. So before we start, allow me to play some videos as our token of appreciations to the host and the organization that have worked together in making this Wecmic 2021 a great success. So please stay with us and enjoying the video as our token of appreciation.
Indonesia is one of the largest archipelagic countries in the world, with more than 17,000 islands that spread over an area of more than 2 million kilometer squares. Indonesia is host to several unique ecosystems containing a large number of diverse species. At least 10% of the world's flowering species, which counts to over 25,000 species, flourish in Indonesia. There are also 12% of the world's mammals, 16% of reptiles, 17% of birds, 6% of amphibians, and over 45% of fishes, all of which are parts of the nation's lush biodiversity. In order to preserve its biodiversity, which also contributes hugely to the world, Indonesia has taken significant steps in accordance to the national and global target on biodiversity framework. The government has allocated more than 500 units of protected areas spread throughout the country, with the total coverage area of 22 million hectares terrestrial and 20 million marine protected area. Because of its uniqueness and universal values, 6 protected areas are recognized as World Heritage Sites, 16 biosphere reserves, 7 Ramsar sites, and 7 ASEAN Heritage Sites. Many studies and researches has also been conducted to identify plants and animals to assess their potential uses for medicine, food, energy, and biocontrol for chemical hazard. Some community-driven activities such as ecotourism has also contributed to the effort to preserve Indonesia's biodiversity, which also encouraged cooperation among local stakeholders. The results are heartening. By 2019, Indonesia has been able to increase the population of endemic and priority species. Communities have also enjoyed benefits from this improved environment through ecotourism, environmental services, and other significant conditions, which contribute to their quality of life as a whole. There is little doubt that Indonesia's vast biodiversity plays a hugely significant role in reducing the impacts of climate change. By preserving its biodiversity and its ecosystems, Indonesia can help support the entire planet's sustainability and ensure a better future for all humankind.
Sejarah Fakultas Kehutanan. UGM resmi didirikan pada tanggal 19 Desember 1949 dan merupakan universitas yang bersifat nasional. Selain itu, UGM juga berperan sebagai pengemban Pancasila dan sebagai universitas pembina di Indonesia. Pada saat didirikan, UGM hanya memiliki 6 fakultas dan salah satu di antaranya adalah Fakultas Pertanian. Dalam perkembangan selanjutnya, melalui Surat Keputusan Menteri Perguruan Tinggi dan Ilmu Pengetahuan Nomor 99 Tahun 1963, Fakultas Pertanian dan Kehutanan UGM terpisah menjadi 3 fakultas. yaitu Fakultas Pertanian, Fakultas Teknologi Pertanian, dan Fakultas Kehutanan. Dengan demikian, Fakultas Kehutanan UGM secara resmi dinyatakan berdiri pada tanggal 17 Agustus 1963. Dekan pertama Fakultas Kehutanan UGM adalah Profesor Insinyur Sudarwono Harjosudiro. Berdasarkan SK Direktur Jenderal Pendidikan Tinggi, SK Dirjen Dikti nomor 163 tahun 2007 tentang pengaturan program studi dan surat keputusan Rektor nomor 89 tahun 2010 tanggal 1 Februari 2010 mensahkan perubahan keempat program studi di Fakultas Kehutanan menjadi satu dengan nama program Studi Kehutanan. Program studi kehutanan terdiri dari 4 bagian, yaitu 1. Departemen Manajemen Hutan, 2. Departemen Silvikultur, 3. Departemen Teknologi Hasil Hutan, dan 4. Departemen Konservasi Sumber Daya Hutan. Di Fakultas Kehutanan terdapat Dewan Perwakilan Mahasiswa atau DPM yang berperan sebagai badan legislatif mahasiswa dan lembaga eksekutif mahasiswa atau LEM. Kemudian terdapat 4 himpunan mahasiswa minat. Di antaranya yaitu Keluarga Mahasiswa Manajemen Hutan atau KMMH, Himpunan Mahasiswa Budidaya atau HIMABA, Family of Forest Product Technology atau Foresttech, dan Family of Forest Conservation atau Forestation. Di samping itu, terdapat Badan Semi Otonom atau BSO yang meliputi organisasi pencinta alam atau Mapala Silvagama, Komunitas Seni Kehutanan atau KSK, Keluarga Mahasiswa Islam Kehutanan atau KMIK, dan Forestry Study Club atau FSC. Sedangkan International Forestry Student Association atau IFSA dan Keluarga Mahasiswa Kristen Kehutanan atau BONITA termasuk ke dalam non-BSO.
FFI bekerja di Indonesia sejak tahun 1996, yaitu awalnya bekerjasama dengan LIPI untuk melakukan penelitian-penelitian, terutama penelitian terkait dengan harimau Sumatera. Kemudian berkembang, kemudian kita ada kerjasama dengan Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup dan Kehutanan, waktu itu Kementerian Kehutanan, terkait dengan pengelolaan spesies-spesies yang dilindungi. Tantangan terbesarnya adalah kata kuncinya sebenarnya kepedulian. Ya, kata kuncinya adalah kepedulian. Kalau semua sudah peduli, maka secara umum sebenarnya pekerjaannya sudah done. Tapi masalahnya itu, bagaimana kita mendorong semua pihak untuk peduli menyelamatkan planet kita ini bersama-sama. Itu tantangan yang paling besar. Kearifan lokal masyarakat juga sangat penting di sana. Jadi di lain pihak kita melihat ada ancaman, tapi di lain pihak juga kita melihat ada kearifan masyarakat untuk menjaga hutannya. Nah, itu yang kita coba untuk dorong untuk dikembangkan di sana. Planet kita ini yang sustaining the planet, itu jangka panjang paling panjang kita. Jadi itu tujuan jangka panjang keberadaan FFI, bukan hanya di Indonesia tapi di dunia.
Okay, so those were the videos from from the host organization and also from the supporter organization. Bapak Ibu, apologize that I was too excited that I forgot to greet the guest, the person that we have here on the at the panelists. First, I would like to greet Bapak Sandi Nurfianto from the Universitas Gajah Mada. Pak Sandi is the chairperson of Wecmic 2021. And then I would like also to greet Pak Iding Haidir from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry of the Republic Indonesia. And then, of course, I would like to greet Pak Wiratno, the Director General of Nature Conservation and Ecosystem of the Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry. And then also I would like to greet Bapak Dr. Sigit Sunarta. He is the Dean of from the Faculty of Forestry of Universitas Gajah Mada. And last but of course not the least is Professor David McDonald, the star of our session tonight. So again, thank you very much for your support and your attention. And also I would like to greet all the attendees that have been joining us tonight. So of course, I mean, we have Wecmic has been well organized for 1 month, and this is all because of the cooperation among the organizations and also partners of this event. So before we start the session again, first allow me to call the chairperson of Wecmic, Bapak Sandi Nurfianto, who told me that he wants to make a few remarks and he would like to share the story about the Wecmic and everything what has been going on in the last 1 month. So Pak Sandi, apa kabar? How are you, Pak? Are you all excited tonight?
Yes, of course. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, finally.
Yes, finally.
Finally, this is the day that we all have been waiting for. So please, Pak Sandi, without further ado, you can have the screen and the microphone.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Mary. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, Director General of Natural Resource and Ecosystem Conservation, Excellencies, Dean and Vice Dean, Faculty of Forestry, Universitas Gajah Mada, Excellencies, Professor David McDonald of Oxford University, Excellencies, all experts of wildlife ecology, conservation, and management. On behalf of Wecmic Organizing Committee, I am delighted to deliver this closing remark on the success of the first Wildlife Ecology, Conservation and Management International Conference, or Wecmic 2021. All sessions were held virtually due to the extraordinary conditions generated by COVID-19 pandemic with the various great themes. As we all know that organizing online event is more challenging than the offline events. Under such circumstances and limitations, Wecmic has been running well as planned. The committee has successfully hosted 11 sessions, including the opening session and discussion on November 1st, 5 abstract presentations, 5 expert talks, plus 1 special guest lecture we are having tonight that would make 12 sessions in total. I can assure you that organizing 12 sessions are not an easy work, but Alhamdulillah, by the grace of God, we have had successfully organized the conference. I believe that during this whole month, we have all had insightful, interactive discussion and good chance to share the outcomes of our research and experiences. I recognize that the organization was not flawless. We had some technical glitches here and there, sometimes little miscommunications with the speaker and presenters. Therefore, apologies for any inconvenience. Ladies and gentlemen, let me share a brief valuable information regarding to the success of Wecmic 2021, which took place during this November. This conference was conducted from 1st until 30 November 2021 and consists of 5 symposia, including first, current status of wildlife research and conservation in the tropics, second, international wildlife trade, and third, human and wildlife conflict, and fourth, technology optimization to address biodiversity management and conservation issues, and 5, the role of ex situ conservation to prevent wildlife extinction. Each symposia was conducted every Tuesday during November 2021. This conference was held entirely using a virtual format with the aid of Zoom meeting platform. There were 33 expert presentations, including 5 by keynote speakers and 28 by invited speakers, and also 32 abstract presentation and 1 special guest lecturer. Totally, this conference was attended by 399 participants, and specifically for the grand opening session was attended by 2,406 participants. This fact showed that the public enthusiasm for Wecmic 2021 was extraordinary, proven by 200 up average participants of each day symposia. Finally, I would like to thank our honorable keynote speakers who shared their valuable knowledge and experiences at the expert talk session, and also all presenters, all authors, reviewers, and all parties who have contributed their best effort and assistance in organizing the event and ensuring the success of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I really hope that the Wecmic 2021 is able to impact all of us to greatly foster and empower the society through science and technology, and enhance public awareness to support wildlife conservation and management in the tropics, especially Indonesia. Please keep in mind that we still have 1 special guest lecturer session tonight by Professor David McDonald from Oxford University. And please make sure you benefit to deliver my pleasure by saying thank you for the great contribution and looking forward to seeing you in the Wecmic 2022. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Sandy, for your remarks. And actually, as he was mentioning about some technical problem, he himself had a technical problem because his bandwidth is running low. That's why his screen looks so small. So, okay, ladies and gentlemen, next I would like to invite Director General of Nature Conservation and Ecosystem at the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, Bapak Wiratno, to make opening but closing remarks of Wecmic 2021. I know this is some kind of, this is a contradictive. So he's making opening ceremony as a closing remarks. So good evening, Pak Wiratno. How are you today? Thank you.
Good. Thank you
for being with us this evening. So without further ado, Pak Wiratno, the screen and the microphone are yours. Please.
Thank you, Mbak Moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Honorable guest, Prof. David McDonald, the Director of CRU, University of Oxford. Prof. Satyawan, Deputy of the Bureau of National Mangrove and Peat Swamp Restoration. Dr. Sunarta, the Dean of Faculty of Forestry, Gajah Mada University, Dr. Rasio Ridosani, DG of Law Enforcement, or Director, Written DG of KSDAE, all member of staff of the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, students, ladies and gentlemen. When we embark the journey of Wecmic to 2021 on November the 1st, the Deputy Minister of Indonesian, Minister of Environment and Forestry, Dr. Aludohong, conveyed an obvious, clear message, and was resonated by expert speaker that wildlife conservation is one of the key to sustainable planet Earth amid the global challenges on the climate change. Throughout November, we are witnessing a complex discussion and trade-off in the global discourses on climate solution during the UNFCCC UK COP26 in Glasgow, of which I personally attended, and was witnessing the challenges of trying to find the best solution for countries to be below the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit. We understood that each country has its own target, capacity, and capability, and of course, interest, particularly toward the economic growth and development, despite the common consensus of sustaining planet Earth. Tonight, quite a few of wildlife conservationists are gathering in this forum, which I do believe that we also have our own overarching goals in this global climate change agenda. To be specific, we have to push that wildlife and biodiversity conservation issues should insofar to the higher level, so that it will be at the level playing field with the main issue of concerns, energy transformations, and land use. It is a just and fair that we fight for our common interests, sustainable Earth for all mankind, and the diversity of living organisms. While we face a challenging task to mainstreaming wildlife conservation into climate change discussion, the global parameter of success remains that is the reduction of greenhouse gases emission. Currently, we see that how much a country or industry or community can lower their emission. It's a matter of the most. Countries and industries can relatively easy to calculate the GHG emission reduction from energy transition and the land use. Nonetheless, the formula in calculating the impact of wildlife conservation to success of climate change program is not available yet. We see that there is a thin thread that is connecting wildlife conservation and climate change. Here I perceive that web platform of Wecmic become very important. Forum like Wecmic 2021 facilitates discussion and knowledge exchange among wildlife conservationists from university, policy makers to partner and public. I saw that Wecmic has brought people from outside the conventional wildlife conservation circle that we have had known previously. This forum has successfully brought knowledge and experience, not only from our fellow wildlife conservationists, but also from other experts from distant disciplines, psychology, technology, human behavior, mathematical modeling, computing, and computer science. Internet, cellular technologies, and communication, machine learning, social sciences, algorithm, management, and business promotion, a number of other interesting topic disciplines. It is crucial to integrate social sciences into natural and mathematical science, like modeling, the ecology, habitat, and use changes, and trend. We have to embrace and encourage collective action at local toward the country and the global scale. It is a global issue that has the role in the sustainability of the planet that we live on. I see, and I hope everybody in this room agree that Wecmic 2021 has convinced us that wildlife conservation is not a standalone corpus of the knowledge. Wecmic 2021 is a platform that is connecting the dots. It connects the issues on wildlife conservation field toward myriad aspects of natural and social sciences. They are making wildlife conservation as highly relevant to the global issues of climate change. Strengthening these dots into a hub would strengthen wildlife conservation effort in the global context and helping the world to understand the actual direct impact of wildlife conservation on mitigating climate change. I do hope that the line that connects wildlife conservation and climate change would have been clearly drawn. For the context of Indonesia, we need to pay more attention to the management of conservation areas to be in line with climate change mitigation and adaptation programs. We have learned from both the abstract presentation and expert talk session, there are many creative ways to do so. We need science-based and evidence-based innovation. Some ideas like establishing wildlife-friendly villages and supporting villages to use biodiversity sustainably are the thing that we need to discuss further. Therefore, I invite you all, let us talk science more in our wildlife conservation program. Wecmic has set a new ground of wildlife conservation discussion at the international level. Let's commit to the continuity and sustainability of Wecmic. Let us do not make this be just a one-time wonder only. Next year, Indonesia hosts G20 meeting. I would like to make a passage for Wecmic 2022 to be part of the G20 meeting, making wildlife and biodiversity management as one of the key topics in the development of our developing world. Ladies and gentlemen, for those who have endlessly supporting Wecmic 2021, I look forward to seeing your contribution and participation again next year. I would like to thank the Faculty of Forestry, Gadjah Mada University, and the Ministry of Environment and Forestry to have hosted this forum. The supporting organization, CHEF, UNDP, CIWT program, and Perspectiva, to the partner organization, Fauna and Flora International, and Borneo Nature Foundation. My sincere gratitude to each of you for your tremendous support, assistance, and dedication. Wecmic has also facilitated the discussion with world-class wildlife conservationists, like our distinguished speaker tonight, Professor David McDonald, who has agreed to share his priceless experience tonight. To end the series of symposium and talk of the Wecmic 2021. Professor McDonald is highly regarded academic, practitioner, expert, and has been over a decade chairing the well-known organization, the Darwin Initiative, IUCN, Kenneth Specialist Group, and has been directing the first university-based wildlife conservation and research in the world. Tonight, we are deeply honored to have Professor McDonald with us. Thank you everyone for your presence tonight, and let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the talk by Professor David McDonald of Wildlife Conservation Research Unit, University of Oxford. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Wiratno, for your remarks. Indeed, this has been a very interesting 1 month, I guess, for friends from the wildlife conservation. As Pak Wiratno mentioned that Wecmic 2021, we were successfully gathering experts not only from the wildlife conservation team, but also we meet people from distant subjects. So I think this is really helping us to make in our work in connecting the dots to make the wildlife conservation is a relevant issue to the bigger problem that the world is seeing right now. So again, Bapak Ibu, thank you for joining us. And in case you miss our previous session, you can just log on to YouTube channel and find YouTube and then find the Wecmic channel. Okay, Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, we are so close to the main show tonight. But before that, I would like to call my friend. Actually, he's my new friend, which we were just met actually a couple months ago, and he successfully convinced me to help him assist this Wecmic 2021. So I would like to call Bapak Iding Haidir to the screen. Bapak Ibu, Pak Iding he is actually the main driver. He's the brain behind Wecmic 2021. He's been pouring so much energy and time to make Wecmic a great success, and of course, he's very proud. He's very proud that he finally able to convince his promoter to be present with us tonight. So, Pak Iding, how are you, Pak? Looking
Hello, good evening.
I see you finally found the right time for tonight. Yeah,
Thank you.
He was busy looking for the perfect tie for the session tonight. So you got the matching tie and shirt tonight. That looks great. Okay, please, Pak Iding, you can run the remaining of the show tonight. Just don't forget to give it back to me at the end of the session, please, Pak Iding.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good evening, Excellency Pak Wiratno, the DG of KSDIA. Good afternoon to Professor McDonald, my friend, and all the distinguished guests from faculty members of Universitas Gadjah Mada, and students, and all my colleagues from Ministry of Environment and Forestry. So the year was 2010 when I attended a postgraduate diploma in International Wildlife Conservation Practice at WildCRU, University of Oxford. I will never forget the first time that I met Professor David McDonald in March, nearly 12 years ago. I was hesitant to call him by his name because in Indonesia, it is very impolite to call people who are way wiser and far more knowledgeable than you directly without his or her title. But it's not for David. I call him by his name. We've been friends now, and I've been always feeling at home when I come back to Tabney House, our WildCRU office just outside Oxford. Once we met, he greeted me, Iding, my friend, welcome home. Now, I would like to greet Professor McDonald, the director of WildCRU. David, welcome back to Indonesia virtually. So this session, I would like to share you 5 slides to introduce our speaker, and will be followed by a short video about the person, the professor that we are talking about. Who is he and how's been doing? So I would like to share my screen, and I would like to show you about a very brief about Professor McDonald. So Professor David White McDonald, CBE IFR is EDSC. is the founding director of Wildlife Conservation Research Unit at University of Oxford. He was chairman of Darwin Initiative for, I think, 10-15 years under the DEFRA UK government. And he's the founding chairman of IUCN Cadet Specialist Group. For your information, David, Sandy did his PhD on Asiatic wild dogs in East Java. So I'm sure he's very know about your work on the IUCN Cadet Specialist Group. And he's has a good position, a very important position at the VV ZSL, VV of Wildlife Trust, trustees of WWF UK, Wildfall and Wetland Trust, and many more. And some of his books. So I'm very honored here that David is the main author of the Encyclopedia of Mammal, the Velvet Plow, and the Biology and Conservation of Wild Felids, and the Biology and Conservation of Wild Canets, to mention some of his books and textbooks. And I just share a nice picture of you both, I mean, your books, between Pak Wiratno book and David McDonald book, the Encyclopedia of Mammal, and the title of the recent book from Pak Wiratno, Wisata Intelektual. And so, hold on. Okay, so I have Hogwarts here with Professor Dumbledore, and I have Oxford here, and I dearly call David as my own Dumbledore. So now I would like to convey to give back to Mary to play a video about Professor David McDonald. It's 3.5 minutes, and please, Mary, to play the video.
One of the terribly important things about studying nature is that it enables us to understand the principles that allow us to understand ourselves. We're standing here in Wytham Woods, just outside Oxford. The name Wytham Woods will resound with anybody who has a background in animal ecology, because it was here in the 1930s and 40s that a wonderful Oxford ecologist, Charles Elton, more or less invented the subject of ecology. And I thought, how could all this new knowledge, this new understanding of nature, be used not just to be fascinating, but to help us solve environmental problems? And so I was in the amazingly challenging but fortunate position to establish in Oxford a research fellowship in wildlife conservation. It came to fruition in 1986, the first university-based wildlife conservation research job in the world, and that was the creation of the Wildlife Conservation Research Unit, the Wild Crew, which I now direct. An institution that has empowered, educated, informed, influenced more than 100 graduate students, thousands of conservation biologists, and now we can see millions of people in the wider public. And we've gone on from then to build this institution to deliver practical conservation solutions around the world, all working together for a common cause to deliver the Wild Crew's mission of evidence-based conservation policy, solving practical problems with the world-class science. You might expect somebody who spent a lifetime with nature working on conservation to major in the stories now on the rough and the tough stuff, and I've done a bit of that. I've toppled a canoe in the Amazon. I've been arrested a couple of times actually in the Orinoco. I remember rolling a jeep down a hill rather painfully in Borneo. I was shot at in Kashmir. That rough, tough stuff is good, and it was fun, and it's led to scientific discoveries that have made a difference. But it's not where the future lies. Where the future lies in taking all of the achievements in conservation, which have created the most wonderful medical kit to intervene when there's a conflict between people and wildlife, but to say that a medical kit by itself is not what a doctor needs. What a doctor needs is to use that medical kit within a wider health service, a framework which will decide how does humanity in the 21st century wish to live alongside wildlife and the environment. And the answer is about an interdisciplinarity that engages every aspect of what we do and which leads to conservation-led development for the developing world. That is where the future lies. I'm David MacDonald. This is a story about conservation, about the wild crew, and perhaps most of all, about a way of doing things.
To your very valuable experience on wildlife conservation. Without further ado, David, the microphone, the screens are yours.
Thank you, Iding. And let me begin briefly by saying hello not only to my distinguished panel members, but also to the audience spread around the world, and to say what a considerable honor it is for me to have been invited to join you today and to be in the company of such distinguished people. Actually, Pak Wiratno, we have corresponded many times in the past, so I regard you as an old friend, and it's a pleasure.
Yeah. I remember. Thank you.
To be here. Very good. So Mary, with her very skillful introduction, said that you had defeated some technical problems in the past. So now the big technical problem is whether I can share my screen. So if we all cross our fingers and hope, I'm going to try and do it. And things are looking quite promising. Share. Okay. So I'm hoping that you can see my screen.
Yes, you can see.
Yes, Iding, can you confirm it's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's appearing now? Okay.
Excellent.
It's appearing. So the next thing is I have to make a small alteration because I can see all of your faces across my screen. I need to adjust that. Okay, I think we're okay. So, colleagues and wider audience, I'm absolutely delighted to speak to you today about a way of thinking about Felid conservation, and all the more delighted that this occasion is moderated right now by my friend and former student, Dr. Iding Haidir, who just embarrassed me greatly with the warmth of his introduction, which was very, very generous. And so now to big cats. If only I could use these 30 or so minutes to thrill you with beautiful pictures of breathtaking big cats, but I fear
Instead, I'm more likely to break your hearts by telling you that unless things change, the next few decades, maybe they're lost. That's why I consider our research on felid landscapes to be important and why it's urgent. And let me express that urgency in terms now of a personal anecdote. When I was 20 years old, I led an expedition to Borneo, living with nomads as I searched for proboscis monkeys. Now, just one generation of biologists later, I was in Borneo again, setting camera traps in Kalimantan with my son for his doctorate on clouded leopards. And in the meantime, in just one generation of biologists from father to son, that island had lost almost 30% of its forest. That is why I talk about urgency. Actually, since I was born, about half of the forests in Southeast Asia had been felled, taking with them marvelous biodiversity, clouded leopards, tigers, and the rest, including 3 species of tiger that have gone extinct during the lifetimes of people alive today. Well, more on Southeast Asia later in my talk, but first, do people care about this wildlife? And which species do they care about? It's a question I think we as conservationists should understand. So to find out, I collaborated with a company called Touchstone, and they are market researchers, and they're expert at studying these questions about what people like, more commonly about food like baked beans or washing up detergents. But we used their expertise to ask a wide population of people which species of wildlife, particularly wild mammals, people preferred for conservation. To find out, we showed them photos, 2 at a time, photos of 100 representative mammal species from around the world. People took the survey online and expressed their preferences, as you can see on this slide, strongly or just mildly, or perhaps they had no preference at all between the 2 species in the photo. And we surveyed 300 people from each of 5 English-speaking countries: the USA, the UK, South Africa, India, and Australia. Well, you might like to guess which species were in the top 10 global favorites. Actually, we published the answers, and here is what they look like. You see how many of the top 10 species were felids. So in this talk, I'm going to tell you about an approach to conservation, a landscape scale approach. I say it runs from groundedness to geopolitics, from very earthy studies in the field to debates in governments. And we've taken one species, the lion, first, and you can see it was number 3 in the popularity parade of this public. And then I'm going to tell you a bit about how we've studied lions and our approach before I return to Southeast Asia to try and apply that approach to another species, the clouded leopard. So, how wonderful it must be to be a lion. After all, they're iconic and they're charismatic. They're sort of ambassadors for nature. And really, they have the attention of the whole world. So surely all is well for lions. Sadly, that is not the case. All is not well. In an analysis led by Wild Crew's Hans Bauer, we revealed that over 3 lion generations, lions had declined across Africa by 43% to perhaps as few as only 20,000 individuals left. Now that's been worse in West and Central Africa, where the decline was 66%. That's 2/3 over 3 generations of lions. And things were not much better in East Africa, where the decline was 59%. But they were quite a lot better in Southern Africa, where lions had actually increased by 8%. Overall, things could not get much worse, you might think. But if our models are correct, I'm afraid they will get worse. In another 3 lion generations into the future, by the time this little cub is himself a grandfather, the number of lions in Africa is likely to have halved again. Shockingly, of the 60 lion populations left in some 24 countries, only 6 of them, they're the blue shaded ones, have 1,000 or more lions left in them today. Well, what have we and my team in the Wild Crew done about this? Let me introduce first my colleague and friend, Professor Andrew Loveridge, pictured there in Zimbabwe. Once again, it is 3 lion generations since in 1999, Andy Loveridge and I began the Hwangi Lion Project. Now we call it, as it's got bigger, the Trans-Kalahari Predator Program. And that's what I'm going to tell you a bit about now. So to begin at the beginning of this map through my talk, let me start with some basics and tell you a little bit about ecology, the fundamental science that will inform our conservation. So we've studied the private lives now over 20 years or so of more than 600 lions, all in Zimbabwe in this case. Our cover stories reveal much about their ecology. For example, this photo is of a pumped waterhole. And if you read the marvelous biographical account of a man called Ted Davison, who was the first warden of Hwangi, you'll discover that there are actually lots of these pumped waterholes, and they provide the only dry season water in this large reserve in Africa. And this yields a rather surprising discovery. It is that the lions almost seem to be semi-aquatic. This male, like all others in our study, used waterholes as, you might say, the service stations, the fuel stations on his route map as he traveled the park. And we learned quite a lot, and amongst it was that lions select habitat close to waterholes, and for example, the more waterholes there are in a part of the reserve, the smaller are the lionesses' home ranges there, creating contours in a landscape of fear for the herbivores, which face greater risks of meeting a lion when they are close to waterholes to drink. And it's at waterholes that 40% of all the lion kills occurred. So browsing antelope like kudu or impala or giraffe have a trade-off of access to water against the risk of being killed while they're there. Consider buffalo. Normally, they visit waterholes in the cool twilight when the lions are around. But when lions are around, the buffalo visit the waterholes at midday because that's when it's too hot for the cats to hunt. Generally, lower in the company of other herbivores, vigilance increases when our GPS collars reveal that there's lions within 2 kilometers. So you can see how finely tuned the behavior of prey is to the danger of predators. But predators, like lions, are influenced not only by their prey, but also by their rivals, as for example, between this leopard and the cheetah it has killed, or between this caracal and the wildcat that it has killed. Leopards, as revealed by another of my students, a man called Byron Dupreez, not only eat rather different prey to lions, but they're also very scared of them. That's shown by these successive camera trap images taken only a few minutes apart, where you can see the leopard is leaving on the left in a big hurry just before, on the next photo, the lion arrives. We took advantage of a remarkable natural experiment at a reserve in Zimbabwe called the Bubi Valley Conservancy, and the map is shown on your screen, where a fence that had previously kept lions out of the bottom right-hand corner of the reserve, you can see it's called Kwalusi. So the fence had previously kept the lions out of that area and away from any leopards that were in that area. But the leopards, unlike the lions, could easily jump the fence because they're so agile. So when the fence was taken down for management purposes, everything changed for the leopards. So while the fence was up, and it's shown on this picture, you can see that this male leopard with his GPS collar, and the blue dots show where he went, wandered everywhere he wanted to go when he was on the east side of the fence, which was entirely free of lions. But when he jumped across the fence into the lion area, he only stuck to the thick cover of the riverside dense vegetation where the lions couldn't easily catch him. And when we look at the use of the habitats by the leopards, in the absence of lions, leopards move at much the same way, at the same speed, and with the same turns left and right in every single different habitat. But when they're in the company of the lions, when they're on the lion side of the fence in this area, the leopards race across any open grassland, but skulk and hide in dense vegetation to avoid the lions. And this change in behavior by the smaller predator seems like a good idea when you realize what lions do when they catch up with leopards. Well, those are the sorts of ecological details that we found out to enable us to plan our conservation studies. So let me turn now to conservation in this same area. These lion cubs may look, as the English idiom has it, as if butter would not melt in their mouths. But sadly, cows certainly do, to the annoyance of farmers. Well, this led us to study 117 different conflict lion deaths, where the lions were killed by the farmers in the community over a 13-year period in our study area. And we found out what predicted the deaths of the lions. The risk of a lion being killed by people was strongly predicted by both the density of cattle in that area and the distance to the nearest village. The result was that the lions living in the middle of the park had a very different life to those living at the edge. The prides at the core of the park are twice the size of those at the edge of the park, where only 42% of the prides survive intact for just 2 years, and just under half of their cubs survive for even 1 year. The reality on the ground involves more than 1,000 stock killed by lions, affecting something like 14% of the local village households at a total annual cost to the community of nearly 50,000 US dollars. Furthermore, I have to tell you very sadly that one child was killed by a lion in the village. So if this was your backyard, you probably wouldn't like it. And this is when these cattle get killed. So we started to study cows, and we found that they are herded closer to the protected area in the wet season, because farmers in the wet season are pushing the cows away from their newly planted corn crops. And most cattle are killed by lions when they are outside of corrals or bomas, and most of those that are killed at night, when you might think they should have been locked up safely in the protective bomas or corrals. So what did we do about this? Having collared a stock raiding lion, we worked with village chiefs to recruit long shields, lion guardians, whose role was broadcast on posters throughout the neighborhood, each under the direction of another of my graduate students, our gentle giant Lovemore Subanda. Actually, I must tell Idding, because he knows Lovemore, that just this morning we put Lovemore on a plane back to Zimbabwe, having secured his degree from the university here. So another personal triumph. Anyway, Lovemore, who ran this scheme, equipped each of the local village lion guardians with a mountain bike, a cell phone, and a GPS machine, so that as the satellite alerted us that a lion had left the park, our headquarters would phone the nearest Long Shield villager, who would use his GPS to go to the location where the lion was shown to be, and would help the farmers round up their livestock. And then he would use a highly technical piece of equipment, his vuvuzela, to chase the lions back into the park and away from the cows. Next, farmers who previously herded a handful of cows each are guided on forming a labor-saving cooperative amongst the farmers and provided with easily erected, portable, lion-proof bomas or corrals within which they could put together up to 100 cows overnight, wherein each of these cows, of course, would leave their dung copiously. So our appropriately named staff member, he was called Leo, then would compare the maize crops that were subsequently grown on the boma treated soil against the untreated soil. So you can see where the cattle had been kept safe from lions in the portable corrals or bomas and left their dung. They had fertilized the ground. And therefore, Leo was able to compare the maize crops grown on the fertilized ground, showing that the number of maize cobs were greater and the size of the cobs were greater. This is important because these are poor people at risk of starvation. So we saved their cows and we increased their food security in the same move, delivering both more and better maize. Meanwhile, every school in the district receives a comic book on our work. It's written in the local language and in English. And our own theatre group has now performed our data to more than 6,000 village children. And then turning from the carrot to the stick, from encouragement to enforcement, we run our own anti-poaching team, pictured here with just 1 month's haul of cut wire snares. And the overall outcome of this intervention has been a significant decline in livestock depredation. Well, I want to move up a scale in our way of thinking now to the landscape scale and to the topic of dispersal. We rely on accumulating case histories that enable us to have a chance of tackling 4 questions to which I'm now going to give you very, very quick answers. When do the lions disperse? How do they disperse? Where can they disperse? And where does the trouble await them? Countless farms. For the lion that I'm following now, it was the green one on that map, traveled through countless farms following this particular fence line as he dispersed over 400 kilometers to arrive at the Central Kalahari Game Reserve, only to find it full of lions, none of whom was particularly pleased to welcome him. So our dispersing lion turned home and 200 kilometers later was killed by a farmer. It took us 10 years of hard work to accumulate enough of these dispersal histories, something like this, to reveal that males from stable homes disperse when they're about 3 years old. If their father dies and is not replaced, young males make up their own mind to disperse when they're 3 years old. But if a new male arrives, they have to leave for fear of infanticide. They leave home almost immediately and they almost always get killed. So how did the dispersing lions arrange their wanderings, their traveling throughout the landscape of our study area in Zimbabwe? It's an area, by the way, roughly the size of France. We asked that question for each of 927 dispersal paths used by our tracked lions, and we overlaid those paths on 7 GIS habitat layers, and we explored 9 alternative possibilities where the lions might have gone but they didn't, so that we could understand what was important about the places where they did go. And this allowed us to reveal that resistance surfaces, that is the ease with which the lions penetrate different habitats, are different for each type of lion. Dispersing males are far less averse to agro-pastoralist land, and they select woodland but avoid grassland and shrubland, and are less averse to roads and people than are other lions. Adult females, it turns out, are the most averse of risk of all the lions. They play it safe and avoid danger. So using these findings, we redraw the map of this part of Africa. But this time we draw the map in terms of the least cost path networks to reveal how lions permeate this landscape. Dispersers do so in a given way, and they make much more use of many more habitats because they are less frightened and take more risks. From there, we can go on to model the entire region to ask where lions are likely to be abundant. And from there, aided by the computing power of Sam Cushman, our landscape wizard, we can rank all the different areas in terms of their importance to the lions. And as a separate analysis, we can rank all the different corridors that join these areas and which are important to the lion population. And finally, again using our local models, we can generate maps of the most dangerous areas for the lions, showing the places where they're most likely to be killed. So this is a scaling up from our local work to our wide-scale work, and scaling up even further from the Trans-Kalahari project now to the whole continent, from the year from having 200,000 lions in 1890, the year 1890, now, and this I think is astonishing, by 1970, which seems like only yesterday, only the lions in those dark blue areas are still intact. In the 50 years since, numbers have dropped by about 1,000 lions every year in their habitat, as it has been shattered to only 12% of its historical extent. So our agenda for the next 5 years is to help conserve the core protected areas and the tenuous threads of corridors that link them. Now, before I turn to clouded leopards in Southeast Asia, let me remind you of the popularity of big cats and these lions in particular when we asked middle-class people with computers to do our survey around the world. That same question was asked again by two of our team, Ewan MacDonald and Lovemore Sibanda, I just mentioned him, and they put this question to the poor villagers living in Zimbabwe. So an identical survey. Of course, these guys didn't have computers, so they looked at photographs instead. And we asked, we know what the top 3 species were for the global community that's enthusiastic about conservation. Were the same top 3 species attractive to the local farmers? Well, you can see the answers were very, very different. And it turns out of the 100 mammal species, the top 10 were mainly big cats for the global community, and they were in the bottom 10 for the local people who really did not want to coexist with these animals. So we found out that these were the preferences, and now we work closely with local people from humble villagers to senior politicians to take our findings in the form of conservation toolkits to government policymakers, pictured here in gatherings in Zimbabwe and Botswana. So I'm now going to turn to Southeast Asia, where, and Iding, our chairman, has been part of this project. We are trying to apply the same way of thinking to big cats in Southeast Asia. One species, one subspecies of tiger has been hanging on, and it was the Indo-Chinese tiger. And about 10 years ago, so let's call that 2 generations of tigers ago, there was an estimate of about 350 of them scattered through Cambodia, southern China, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam, as I'm sure many of you will know. My student, Akchu Rasfoni, documented the last of them in Laos. In 2018, she also became the first Laotian woman in history to get a doctorate from Oxford University, another fact of which I'm very proud. Tragically, these were the last 2 tigers documented by the camera traps in Laos. Akchu's doctorate provides the biodiversity baseline for Laotian conservation planning. So, 10 years passed, Indo-Chinese tigers survive only in Thailand and Myanmar, and we have teams hard at work in both. But the story gets worse. Just as the last tigers disappeared from the Laotian reserve, they were followed towards oblivion by the last Indo-Chinese leopards. Thank goodness, a handful survive in nearby Cambodia, where, interestingly, since tigers have been wiped out, the leopards, fascinatingly, begin to behave more like tigers. And they begin to hunt big prey like banteng. However, poachers, pictured in the slide, hunt both the banteng and the leopards. Last year, we reckon that there were just 6 Indo-Chinese leopards left in Cambodia. We've just finalized the 2021 analysis, and I'm afraid it looks even worse. So you get the general picture here. Another couple of generations, this time generations of Indo-Chinese leopards, and another stomach-wrenching decline towards extinction. Why does it matter? Well, take your pick of answers. Firstly, these charismatic cats are the greatest engines of the dollar value of wildlife tourism. Secondly, they're crucial moving parts in ecosystems which, without them, grind to dysfunction. And thirdly, because they have huge aesthetic and I think intrinsic value, so simply they're worth the effort in themselves. My own experience in Bhutan illustrates the journey. When I first went there, we did early, earthy fieldwork, counting tigers, and we actually recognized 8 tigers in one national park. And then, as now around the world, we worked with impoverished farmers to learn from them and to help them live alongside big cats. But nowadays, our modern approach is more sophisticated as well. It builds on huge camera trapping surveys, like this one in Bhutan, to support sophisticated analyses to tease out the factors that matter and scale them up to identify priority conservation areas and the corridors that link those areas. And through consultation with stakeholders, that's, by the way, Wild Cruise man Ugyen Penjaw in the front left of the picture, at a government stakeholder meeting, to use those to come with policy analyses and national plans, which brings me finally to the ambassador species for today, the clouded leopard. Months of carrying heavy camera traps around the Tawau hills of Sabah, some of you will know them, identified 5 male Sunda clouded leopards living there. And we've just satellite tagged 3 of them. Just look at the amazing pattern on that animal's shoulders, isn't it beautiful? Across Southeast Asia, more than 10 years' work has yielded for us 6 million camera trapping images, and our chairman Iding was responsible for quite a few of them, enabling us to model the best habitat for clouded leopards throughout Southeast Asia. Now, I'm showing you this slide for just 10 seconds, but it represents about 7 years of fieldwork, and it caused a supercomputer months of indigestion. So please realize the amount of work involved. It turned out that Myanmar was the top hotspot when we predicted core population areas for mainland clouded leopards. And next we identified, as with the lions, the corridors that linked the population hotspots. And once again, we ranked their importance. But learning from my lion methodology, if I can call it that, we also discovered that Myanmar is developing fast. And our simulations reveal that 36% of the core areas for clouded leopards today are likely to be lost under the plans for current developments. So we set about building toolkits for conservation-led development. So here to illustrate is the difference from the left to the right that would be made to clouded leopard habitat if each development plan was implemented. And this particular simulation illustrates what would happen if the 53 proposed dams were built, or here, if all the new proposed highways were built. There would be a fragmentation of habitat. And then we take our results to work with the local government authorities. And you can see here that we're meeting with senior government officials to discuss these results in Myanmar. Well, what next? With our colleagues throughout Southeast Asia, we'll focus partly on tigers because they're spectacular, and very much on clouded leopards because there's enough of them left to serve as icons for nature conservation across the region. And we're lucky to have got funding to use the newest NASA imagery, which will enable us to tackle the most detailed habitat and connectivity analyses I think ever attempted for these ambassadorial felids, to provide the evidence to impact on policy and practice. Taking our toolkits with conservation policy to the politicians who make that policy. We strive to be heard where it counts. By the way, the woman, as you might recognize on the top right, was the Deputy Prime Minister of Sabah. The man at the head of the table on the top left is the Director General of Myanmar's Department of Forests. Bottom right, our man Eric Ash is talking about tigers to the Secretary of State in Thailand. So we try to get our results to people who have influence and to fill in data gaps. For example, think of the gorgeous marbled cat and the rare flat-headed cat, which are high priority for us. So to conclude, conservation has transformed, certainly during my lifetime and probably during most of your lifetimes. Now, I think it's less about struggling to know what can we do, and it's more about wanting to know what should we do? What are our priorities? A topic we tackled for felids more generally. In terms of species attributes, which ones matter most? Well, it could be that we're concerned with their endangerment or their evolutionary distinctiveness or their body mass or the percentage of their range that's protected or their habitat associations. So you could rank felid priorities on the basis of these ideas, or indeed with their umbrella capacity, how many species their range protects. And in that case, leopards and clouded leopards are terribly important. But you can also think about each country's infrastructural capacity to deliver conservation, to be able to afford conservation. And this gave us an idea of a quadrant of possibilities, trying to balance between priority areas for cats and where the infrastructures were strong enough to support different sorts of interventions, taking what I hope is a mature geopolitical view of conservation practicalities. And that way of thinking, comparing ecological fragility and geopolitical fragility, is something that could be explored for each species in each country in each protected area, as we're now doing, by the way, for lions, as this graph illustrates. Well, mentioning lions again, never in history has this conservation journey from groundedness up to geopolitics been more dramatically played out than on the night when 4.4 million people visited our website following the bow hunting death of the lion called Cecil. 4.4 million people came to my website in one night. Now, we had first tagged Cecil the lion in 2008, and we tracked his every movement for 8 years until he was killed, seemingly illegally, at bait by a bow hunter. Well, for better or worse, we were catapulted onto the world stage. In 2016, we hosted the International Cecil Summit, and we now we conferred not in an ecology lab, but rather in a school of government to show you how thinking had changed. 3 years later, we launched the first ever Conference on Conservation Geopolitics. We were reaching a new global cadre of leaders. Well, I draw to a close, colleagues. lest all this talk of hard numbers and costs and benefits beguiles us, remember that there's other things to consider too. There are aspects of the value of nature that cannot readily be put into money. So beyond the technicalities of conservation, don't forget the existence value of the animals we're talking about. You might call it the spirituality of nature. Don't forget also that while biology is necessary, it is not sufficient to deliver outcomes in this inescapably transdisciplinary endeavor to save tigers and lions and clouded leopards and their kind, which is ultimately about politics. And above all, it hinges on teamwork. By the way, these meerkats, which I worked on in the Kalahari Desert, are not cats at all. They are arguably, however, the most cooperative carnivores on Earth. They can't survive alone, and nor can we. In our approach to felid landscapes, we strive to unite the earthiness, the down-to-earthness of animal lives, human livelihoods, and practical action. And the erudition, the learnedness, the scholarship of big ideas. So we go from groundedness to geopolitics, bridging extremes of values, of biologies, even of cultures. Felid landscapes, with its emphasis on pushing the scientific boundaries of what we can do, mindful of the values that might guide what we should do rather than what we can do, and also why we should do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. It was very, very thought-provoking lecture talk by Professor David MacDonald, and very interesting. Really opened our eyes, really opened our that the interconnectivity, like very multidisciplinary approach from biology, conservation, and it is very much in line with our discussion with Pak Wiratno, with the DG of KSDIA, because like a week ago, Pak Wiratno launched his new book in Kupang, but the digital society that although we are transforming from manual things into digital, but we remained work on the ground. We saw like boots on the ground. So I really highlight this about the importance of working in the ground, the basic science, then we have to convert into policy. So ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and speaker, so we are here, have two living legends in conservation from different parts of the world. We have Pak Wiratno here, and we have David MacDonald in Europe. It's still afternoon. We have 15 minutes to open the question and answer. So if you are here, have a question, please do raise your hand, or maybe you can write down your question. And before that, I would like to read out, we have a question to David from Muhammad Ali Imran. He's from the Universitas Gadjah Mada, I suppose. Pak Ali Imran, yes? So I would like to read out the question. Dear Professor MacDonald, I'm impressed and learned a lot from your presentation. I have a question regarding ecological roles of predator. What is your opinion on the relation between predator and ecosystem? Do predators play roles more as a top-down process, or ecosystem play more role as bottom-up predator population? And what are the conservation implications for those perspectives? Please, David. Also, I'm inviting people to ask questions to, we have Pak Wiratno and we have David, please.
Okay. So, Idin, can I check you can hear me well now?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Yeah.
Very good. I think Mohammed's question is a very interesting one, because I remember when I started my career actually working on red foxes in the British countryside, there was a great controversy about whether predators were limiting or regulating their prey, or whether prey were limiting and regulating their predators. And I think what's become clear to me over the intervening years is that this is a question a bit like asking which side of a coin is the more important, the left side or the right side, is that both processes happen. And clearly there are many elegant studies showing the impact of predation on prey populations and the cascading ecological consequences of that. But equally, there are many studies showing the enormous impact of prey populations on their predators. So I think this is a network, a cyclical connectedness. And to say that one is more important than the other, I think requires knowing where you are at a particular moment in time in which ecosystem. I think both are important. And when Mohammed asks, what is the relevance for conservation, I would say the general relevance is an added appreciation of the complexity of nature's cycles and processes, where everything affects everything else, and that it's often not very fruitful to worry about what is the most important single thing, because that's a dynamic and moving target. All the moving parts seem to be important. So I hope Mohammed doesn't think I'm dodging the question by saying both are important.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. So since we have been both I call them both as my role model. We have Pak Wiratno and David. So if you have a question, Pak Wiratno to David, or either David to Pak Wiratno, or mixed direction, I would like to have like maybe another 5 minutes if there's so.
May I ask David?
Please, Pak.
Yes, I heard, David, I heard that in India, they are very successful in protecting the tiger. The population is almost doubling. Is it true? And what is the secret of their success? And I can share to you that in case of Sumatran rhino, for instance, we need a full protection. And now we have a long experience on the, what do you call it, Sumatran rhino sanctuary in Wecmic National Park, and we put it with fences, with the electricity and 24-hour guarding, and we have right now 7 individuals of Sumatran rhino, and hopefully it will be in West and East Lausure, there will be a rhino sanctuary with the same treatment. It will be a full protection with the fences. And I've been in Tumbling. Tumbling is the place that in Bukit Barisan Selatan National Park and managed by Tommy Winata, and also it is a full protection. And it seems that maybe we should invite David to Tumbling and also to Wecmic. I believe that this full protection is needed also for the very strong law enforcement. And the second thing is, I believe that there is no single solution for the protection of the wildlife. In case of Indonesia, I think I believe that a combination with the involvement of local community, their economic involvement, better economics based on the forest. David, we have a Tangkahan. Tangkahan is very phenomenal. It's been 20 years now. And the local community, we help them to establish what we call it wildlife-based ecotourism. We use elephant there, and they're protecting the the forest part of the lodger, and we give them now 3,600 area to be managed by the local community as a compensation. They help us, they got the access for community-based ecotourism, and it seems that it is the solution. At least we have a lesson learned from Tangkahan and Bukit Waikambas and Ujung Kulon. Also, we use full protection policy. Thank you, David.
Yes,
Thank you, Pak Wiratno. Yes, please, David, you want to say something?
I would like to respond, if I may. Of course, Pak Wiratno makes some very important and wise comments, and I would like, first of all, strongly to agree with his overall summary that there is no one single solution to any or all conservation problems. And I think the lesson to be drawn from his wise words are that you need to understand each problem in its particular circumstances and try and customize a solution to that particular problem in that particular place at that particular time. Of course, there are general principles, and Pak Wiratno also mentioned the emerging importance of community-based conservation, where, at least in some measure, the community is engaged in trying to deliver and benefit from conservation as well. And so, of course, there are some general rules, but like all general rules, they have to be customized to a particular problem. And then, with that in mind, I'd like to turn back to Pak Wiratno's opening remarks about the successes or not of conserving tigers and indeed rhinos, and I'll make some brief comments about that. I think, again, it's a mixed story. I think we could be quite astonished that in India, a country with an enormous human population, with almost phenomenal, unbelievable pressure on habitats and landscapes, they are nonetheless able to conserve enough to retain some tigers, especially remembering in a sort of geopolitical context the infrastructural difficulties they face. And so personally, I would be congratulatory about the effort and the aspiration and the success. There is debate, of course, about exactly how much the numbers have increased and where they have increased. And there may be some errors or some misinterpretations, but I think what's more important to me is that it's a nation where people are trying hard against very considerable odds. There are other parts of the continent where, as I mentioned in my talk, the fate of tigers and indeed leopards and most large carnivores is dreadful, and we are watching extinctions the whole time. And in that context, the uncontrollability of poaching or illegal hunting or snaring appears at the moment to be, in some regions, some countries, a flood that cannot be stopped. So again, different countries, different circumstances, different problems. And in all of those cases, and I'm trying to stick to the script, as it were, of Pak Wiratno's suggestions, he mentioned the importance of enforcement of one sort or another. And in that context, he mentioned rhinos. And I too have been to places where one sees a level of guarding of rhinos that is quite astonishing. I was at one point at a reserve, in fact, in South Africa, where I was watching some rhinos and was thrilled at their beauty and their splendor. And then I realized that in this particular reserve, wherever there was a rhino, there was also one or more men with a gun guarding the rhino, because the poaching threat was so serious. And frankly, that that almost brings tears to one's eyes that we live in a world where for a rhino to survive in the face of the power of the poachers, there has to be a 24-hour guard with a rifle standing beside the rhino. That's a very impacted form of nature. So anyway, my reflections there, Iding, are merely to agree with the complexity that Pak Wiratno identified. And I think the opinion we share is that the road to solution requires scientific understanding, it requires collaboration between different sectors, it requires community engagement, and it needs to be customized to the particular situation.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Pak Wiratno. Thank you very much, guests and participants, faculty member from UGM. I am sadly to say that we are reaching our end of session. We have questions actually, but I don't want to keep you because now it's quarter past 9 from 9. Yeah, it's night time. So I don't want to make people awake so for so long. And thank you very much because David this morning he had a long session with a Chinese government discussion. So
yes.
I don't want to take your time, and thank you very much. I do apologize for those who are asking questions, and I don't mean anything, but we have very limited time. So again, I would like to say thank you very much for very generous knowledge from David and from generous support, endless support from Pak Wiratno to Wecmic 2021. So on behalf of this session, I would like to give back to Mary. Thank you very much. Mary, please. Mary, can you hear me?
Sorry, yes, I'm here.
Yeah, I already gave it back to you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Pak Iding, for driving the discussion. Also, thank you very much, Professor David McDonald and also Pak Wiratno. So, Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, of course, we just had a very interesting special guest lecture by Professor David McDonald, and I believe that all of us we benefit from the lectures. Of course, it's with our regret that we did not have much time for the question and answer. But of course, I think Professor David McDonald, you can find his contact everywhere, and you can just drop him email anytime if you have any questions. Here now we are really at the end of our session tonight. And this is also really the end of Wecmic 2021. So ladies and gentlemen, to the committee, thank you very much. And this is really the time for us to start the party. And I have to send everybody home. Good evening. Good evening to all of you. So I hope to see you all again next year in Wecmic 2022, if not sooner, because we might, I think Iding already has something on his mind, follow-up programs from this Wecmic 2021. So thank you very much. Good night, Bapak Ibu. And for the committee and also for the people at the, for the panelists, please stay for a little while. We're going to do a quick family photo session. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Foto dulu, Pak. Izin
siap.
take a picture. Yeah.
Picture, please. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Big smile.
Ini boleh, iya. Sip.
Okay.
Andre, siapa ya? Oke.
Siapa yang moto?
Sudah difoto, Pak. Sedang difoto.
Yeah. Thank you. David, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
you very
everybody.
We'll
much.
invite you to Indonesia,
Thank you,
David.
David.
I look forward to it. Okay.
Okay.
Good luck,
Okay.
everyone.
We will
Bye,
arrange.
Bye-bye.
take
Thank you,
care.
bye.
Terima kasih banyak Pak
Terima
Dirjen.
kasih ya.
Ya,
Terima kasih
bangga.
Pak
Terima
Wir.
kasih
Terima
Pak
kasih.
Pak
Terima kasih
Wir.
banyak Pak Wir.
Terus.
Thank you
Excellent,
very much
teman-teman.
David.
Pak
Dan Pak
Dirjen.
Dekan juga.
Sukses ya Pak Wir.
Terima kasih.
Pak Dekan, Pak Wakil Dekan
Ya.
semuanya.
Semuanya Pak
Dekan,
Dekan.
Pak
Selamat
Ya.
waktunya.
Ya,
Terima
terima
Makasih
kasih Pak Wir.
banyak.
Mary.
Yes.
Selamat guys, selamat.
Selamat.
Oke.
Selamat. Udah bisa pesta nih.
Bisa
Waduh, ini
tidur.
saya udah beli makanan ini. Nanti mau pesta ya. nih.
Selamat guys.
Indonesia is one of the largest archipelagic countries in the world, with more than 17,000 islands that spread over an area of more than 2 million kilometer squares. Indonesia is host to several unique ecosystems containing a large number of diverse species. At least 10% of the world's flowering species, which counts to over 25,000 species, flourish in Indonesia. There are also 12% of the world's mammals, 16% of reptiles, 17% of birds, 6% of amphibians, and over 45% of fishes, all of which are parts of the nation's lush biodiversity. In order to preserve its biodiversity, which also contributes hugely to the world, Indonesia has taken significant steps in accordance to the national and global target on biodiversity framework. The government has allocated more than 500 units of protected areas spread throughout the country, with the total coverage area of 22 million hectares terrestrial and 20 million marine protected area. Because of its uniqueness and universal values, 6 protected areas are recognized as World Heritage Sites, 16 biosphere reserves, 7 Ramsar sites, and 7 ASEAN Heritage Sites. Many studies and researches has also been conducted to identify plants and animals to assess their potential uses for medicine, food, energy, and biocontrol for chemical hazard. Some community-driven activities such as ecotourism has also contributed to the effort to preserve Indonesia's biodiversity, which also encouraged cooperation among local stakeholders. The results are heartening. By 2019, Indonesia has been able to increase the population of endemic and priority species. Communities have also enjoyed benefits from this improved environment through ecotourism, environmental services, and other significant conditions, which contribute to their quality of life as a whole. There is little doubt that Indonesia's vast biodiversity plays a hugely significant role in reducing the impacts of climate change. By preserving its biodiversity and its ecosystems, Indonesia can help support the entire planet's sustainability and ensure a better future for all humankind.